when a team completely falls apart on the field and everyone watching is left wondering how everything went sideways so fast, there comes a moment when all eyes turn to one person. And on the night the Ravens took that painful loss to the Bengals, everyone wanted to hear from just one voice, Lamar Jackson. When he finally broke the silence, what came out was short, sharp, and explosive. 3 little words that suddenly reshaped the entire tone of the season and left behind a tension you can almost feel in the air. Because when an MVP says something like that after a loss is heavy, it's not just a comment, it's a warning. It's the kind of message that makes you stop, look at this team again, and realize there's something much bigger happening behind those plays. And that's exactly what becomes clear once you break down what Lamar said and what he didn't say. Every detail gives away more about the Ravens' future than it first seemed. After the loss to Cincinnati, Lamar stepped in front of the cameras clearly frustrated, but without trying to dress anything up. When someone asks what he thinks needs to happen for the offense to finally find its rhythm again, he answered with something so simple it almost catches you off guard. Just be me, just be Lamar. It sounds light, almost casual, but there's so much packed inside those words, almost like he's reminding himself, I know what I'm supposed to be. I just need to get back to being that guy on the field. That answer came right after a night where nothing really clicked. He completed about half his passes, didn't throw a touchdown, and had 3 turnovers that changed the whole flow of the game. And even with all of that, he didn't talk about play calling, scheme changes, or drastic adjustments. Instead, he brought everything back to something personal, something basic. The idea that the problem starts with him, and the solution starts there too, with him finding the version of himself that usually decides games. At the same time, the honesty in that line leaves behind a sense of vulnerability. Because when Lamar says, just be me, he's acknowledging that he hasn't been that player lately. He knows he's been performing below the level everyone expects, the level he expects. And when a quarterback of his caliber boils everything down to his own identity, it shows the battle now is just as mental as it is technical. Almost like his biggest challenge is remembering what makes him who he is. And that simple answer ends up opening a deeper look into what Lamar has been dealing with these last few weeks. Because if the solution is being himself, then it all starts with what happened once he came back from that injury. A stretch where his rhythm disappeared, his numbers dipped, and his confidence took a hit. And that's what gives this quote another layer when you think about what comes next. When Lamar uses such a short line to explain such a big problem, it says a lot about where he is emotionally. He didn't try to explain, didn't try to justify, didn't walk through technical details. He just put the responsibility on himself, like someone who knows they've been getting the same questions over and over again. And that quiet frustration shows up at the same moment he's dealing with constant questions about the offensive struggles since he returned. It's already clear he hasn't fully regained his confidence, and that direct answer almost feels like a way of avoiding going in circles. Because he knows he hasn't been delivering what everyone expects, and repeating explanations only makes it feel like nothing is changing. By saying, just be me, Lamar gets straight to the point. He knows he hasn't been the quarterback this team needs, and he refuses to turn the press conference into a long list of excuses. What's even more interesting is how this ties into the moment the offense is living right now. Even with the numbers trending down, Lamar seems to view his own dip in performance as the central issue. It's like he believes that if he can get back to being the guy he used to be, the entire offense will snap back into shape with him. It's a simple way to look at a complicated situation, but it shows how he's trying to keep himself grounded during this messy stretch. And holding on to that simplicity ends up setting the stage for something even more delicate, how his recent mistakes have directly affected the team. Because the second he says he just needs to be himself, another question pops up automatically. How you do that when turnovers keep showing up game after game? His comment gets even heavier. When you line it up with the numbers he's put up since returning from injury. He had that incredible game against Miami. But since then, the drop has been obvious. Low accuracy, trouble finishing drives, and a constant feeling that he's half a step off the rhythm he usually controls. And when someone in that situation says they just need to be themselves, you can't help noticing the gap between intention and reality. That gap actually creates an emotional layer to all this. Because Lamar isn't just trying to explain, he's trying to find himself again. And that comes through when he gives such a stripped-down answer. Almost like using fewer words is the most honest way to face what he's feeling. The phrase works almost like an admission that excuses won't fix anything. He needs to return to the level he always had. The problem is that the field hasn't reflected that return. The game against the Bengals made a repeating pattern impossible to ignore. Inconsistent throws, rushed decisions, and offense that keeps stalling in moments that used to flow naturally. That's why his answer sounds more like a hope than a conclusion. He knows what he wants to do. He knows the player he needs to be, but the execution just isn't there yet. And that distance between what Lamar says and what he produces opens the door to another factor turning up the pressure: turnovers. Because as important as identity and confidence are, no quarterback can truly be himself when the ball keeps slipping away.
All right, we're already past the halfway point of this video, but before we continue, I noticed you haven't left a like yet. It's really important because it helps YouTube keep showing you my content so I can keep bringing you the best news about the Baltimore Ravens. So go ahead and hit that like button. It's free and it really helps. Thanks. Now let's get back to it.
When Lamar says just be Lamar, he might be trying to remind himself of the version of him that always protected the ball well, improvised safely, and took over games naturally. But right now, the reality looks nothing like that. Fumbles and interceptions are popping up more often, and that slowly chips away at any sense of control. That's why his line feels almost like a survival instinct. A player trying to hold on to who he is while dealing with weeks filled with mistakes. The strange part is how this need to reaffirm his identity shows up right when his errors have started impacting the results directly. Every turnover adds pressure, changes the narrative, and shakes confidence. And knowing his mistakes have weighed this heavily makes his line even more loaded. Because being Lamar used to mean explosiveness, efficiency, and positive unpredictability. Now he's trying to reclaim that while carrying emotional weight he didn't have before. Even so, you can tell he's trying to keep things simple, maybe so he doesn't get lost in long explanations. He doesn't want to talk about mechanics, play calls, or reads. He wants to believe everything goes back to normal once he returns to the version of himself he trusts. That mindset might sound overly optimistic, but it helps explain where his head is right now. And that's why the way he uses tight ends against the Bengals fits perfectly into this search for identity. Because that's exactly where he tried to reconnect with something familiar. That night in Cincinnati, Lamar leaned heavily on the guys he trusts most. Mark Andrews and Isaiah likely were responsible for nearly all of the production through the air. It was inside those familiar connections that he tried to find a spark, and he sparked, to settle back into rhythm. And still, even those connections ended up marked by mistakes, like Likely's fumble in the end zone. For a quarterback trying to be himself, seeing even his safety valves fail creates a different kind of weight, and that weight grew heavier as the game unfolded in a way where absolutely nothing seemed to click. 5 turnovers, only 16 first downs, and no real ability to respond to Joe Burrow's offense. Lamar might believe he just needs to reconnect with his true self, but the reality on that field showed everything around him was falling apart too. That's why his quote, simple as it is, carries so much underneath. Even with his 246 passing yards, one of his top numbers of the season, it all felt lost inside the team's collective mistakes. And when a quarterback feels like he's swimming against the current, that just be me starts sounding almost introspective. It becomes not just a goal, but a reminder, one that he's gotten through tough stretches before by staying loyal to his own style. And that blend of confidence, struggle, and self-searching naturally brings up the question that echoes inside every fan. If Lamar believes being himself is the answer, what exactly does he need to do inside this current chaos to find that version again? The next chapter of this story might depend entirely on the answer he delivers on the field next week. When the dust settles, this loss to the Bengals leaves behind more questions than answers, and Lamar Jackson's post-game comments only amplified the feeling that something needs to shift quickly inside that locker room. His frustration, his internal pressure, and the rising expectations outside the building create a heavy atmosphere, one where every decision from now on could reshape the season. And when your own quarterback admits he was enough, it becomes impossible to brush this moment aside. It's the kind that has to mean something. Now, the question hanging in the air is simple, but loaded. Do you believe Lamar Jackson can turn this slump into fuel and bounce back as soon as next week? Because everything points to this being the breaking point, the moment where the team rises or watches the season slip away. And with so much at stake, whatever comes next is going to echo far beyond Sunday.
And if you, just like me, are passionate about the world of football and want to learn more about the Ravens' legacy, don't leave this video without sharing it with that friend who is also a Baltimore Ravens fan and will love this content. See those video suggestions on your screen? The first one was handpicked just for you, and the other is a recommendation from YouTube itself.